Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're here with our after chat with Jerry Kantor and the book, The Sane Asylum. And we wanted to have some fun in this after chat. You said you had a fun story.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is a fun story. A teenager was brought to me at one time, um, who was under the delusion that he was a robot,
Oh,
and this was causing quite a problem. He was impossible to teach. He was um, acting robotically. He was uh, just failing school. His family was at a loss. He had defeated a number of therapists. He was just
defeated. I
absolutely
like that word.
defeated. He was I'm a robot. I said, what does that mean? I'm just a mechanical object. I'm a robot. So what I did, I said, well, it's not a problem for me. I've treated robots before, so this is fine. I'm not going to argue with you about this.
I like it.
So what I found out, but going in just sort of casually going into the case, I said, so what's going on? How did this, were you always a robot? What happened to you and what's going on? And it turned out, he was in a biology class and they were teaching Darwinism. And the lesson was that, birds had no control over what color they would have, was completely a function of the environment. And they would adapt and become, a certain kind of color. And in his case, well, everybody in the class heard this, but for something happened with him whereby he took this to this deep kind of a level, and that he decided he was a robot. Now, what I knew about his background, when you take someone's case, you have to something like this. If you hyper focus on just that, oh, I've got to give you a drug that's an anti-robot drug, it's not going to work. But what I gained from his background was that there was a considerable amount of conditional love in his background. In other words, his parents were highly critical of him. He was a sensitive kind of person. He had poor self-esteem. He developed certain kinds of skin conditions. Now, warts are a dead giveaway for the remedy that I was suspecting. And I came to me, well, this kid probably needs thuja. Thuja is a remedy made from arbor vitae, where the self-esteem is very poor. But I'll say more things about it. Someone who needs that remedy cannot access his or her self-interest. Like someone who doesn't need that remedy can just sort of ask their gut, is this person good for me? Is this a good thing to do? Yeah, I've got an idea about it. It's not a matter of intelligence. It's just being able to access your self-interest. Someone who can't do that is living a Groucho Marx joke that goes, I would not join a club that would have me as a member. You know that joke?
Yeah.
Very much about self-deprecation.
Yeah.
I'm split. But if the club had such bad standards as to accept me, why would I go there? And even that kind of thinking is what I call mental gymnastics. You overthink things, go down a certain track, and you can't let go of this idea, and you cannot, as a result, I'm not a therapist, it's the subconscious has exchanged the ability to access your self-interest for mental gymnastics, overthinking. And you really are trying to disguise the fact of how bad you feel about yourself by your attraction to this over the mental agile thinking. So to me, his thinking he's a robot was an example of that.
Interesting. So did the thuja help him?
Yeah. So this is what happened. I said, yeah, I forget about it. I have no problem treating robots. You can be a robot. It doesn't matter to me. So I gave him thuja, and when he came back 5 weeks, he was no longer a robot. But he needed a remedy for depression. The thing about the thuja state, it's deeply about inauthenticity. You cannot lead an inauthentic life. It's not even the depression remedy, it's an anguish remedy. You cannot stand to be in your own skin. You will be anybody other than who you actually are. That's the Groucho Marx joke. The trauma to the personal self-worth is enormous. So anyway, that remedy state is a layer insulating you from the actual pain, the authentic pain of having been given conditional love as opposed to unconditional love in your family. That's a genuine pain. So when he came back, I was not surprised that he was depressed.
Yeah.
He was depressed, and he needed another, what I call psychotic, SYCOTIC remedy, where the sense of identity has been disturbed, and you need a remedy that is actually related to the disease gonorrhea. It's complicated. That sounds complicated. That's what the psychotic remedies are. So natrum sulfurica is one of the remedies that follows after thuja. Not automatically, the other ones that could happen. But when he came back, he was depressed in the sense that the issue in that remedy, and you'll understand how this relates to thuja, is he felt like he didn't count for anything, like he was treated like like he was invisible. But that was a genuine feel, an authentic feeling, and he would talk about that kind of sadness, but he did not consider himself a robot anymore. So we had to peel that one layer away, let this other one come back, because the pain of that rejection was so intense that the thuja layer insulated him from that feeling, and we had to peel that away. So that's an instructive example of how homeopathy can work for a psychiatric condition.
So what about behaviors, addictive behaviors, something like gambling, for example? I don't know that that's necessarily considered a psychological issue, but essentially it is. So if you had somebody come in and who said, I have anxiety, and then you find out they're a gambler is the next level. And then what would you look at next? What would be below that? What would be the next thing that you would ask?
Yeah, there are miasms that have definitely an overrepresentation for addictive behavior because of cyclical thinking. And addiction is whereby you want something and then you want something because you want something because you want something, and you can't break out of that loop.
Yeah.
I can put it in sexual terms too, because it relates to remedies like syphilis. If you need a syphilitic remedy, you're engaged in foreplay, but you never get what you want. You just go on it infinitely long, and you never get to a climax. And this is actually paralleled in the structure of the syphilitic spirochete, which has a cyclical structure. The syphilitic miasm is about secrecy and shame, and again, this cyclical thinking, which actually creates a groove that deepens the more you think about things. So syphilitic remedies are all, people who need those remedies tend to be addictive in every direction, for alcoholism, for gambling, for all kinds of stuff. So it's not necessarily just the type of gambling that you do. Certainly if it's sexual addiction, you would think of syphilitum.
Interesting.
But why would somebody gamble? That could go into another direction. But I would look pretty deeply at it to see what's the payoff for that person, what has worked for that person to when they went at their best and they were able to overcome it. Let me think what I was going to tell you about. Here's an addiction story I can tell you. Okay. This is really early in my career, but it was just very, very instructive. A good friend of mine told me that she had a cousin who was addicted to heroin. Can you do anything for that? She said. I said, I have absolutely no idea. This is really tough. So I'll give it a shot. So she sent me this cousin who by chance was basically a good guy. He had didn't need any medications. He had a decent job, but I think he lost his job. He's on the verge of losing his family because of his heroin addiction. So I took his case like I normally did, and I said to him, again, this is like what I said to the robot guy. I said, you know what? I'm going to be the one person in your life who's not going to be in your case about your addiction. I don't approve of it. It's a bad thing. But for me to do my job, I'm going to sort of ignore that for the time being. And I just took his case. And it turned out, there were these various influences early in his life, various kinds of rejection. This goes back so far, I don't remember. But I gave him a remedy for what I thought was going on with him, and I sent him home. A few weeks later, then, he didn't contact me. He said, oh, gee, what's happened with so-and-so? So I contacted my friend. She said, oh, yeah, he's using again. It did nothing. So I said, well, tell him to come back. I want to understand this a little bit. Maybe I gave him the wrong remedy. Let me see if I can figure this out. So he came back and he told me, yes, he was using, but there was a slight change in the pattern. He went to a different place, or it took a little bit longer, or some things came up that in his awareness, but in the end, he did wind up using again and buying. So I said to him, okay, look, just stay with me for a couple of months. Let's see what happens. I don't care. Again, I don't approve of you. I wish I could wave a magic wand, make you stop. This is terrible, but just stick with me. Let's see what happens. And I just did my usual thing. I treated him based on what would come up psychologically, what symptoms he had. And again, the second time it happened, also used, 2 or 3 more times, I think only just 2 more times, he came back and said, I stopped. I'm done. It cured him. And because I completely ignored, he just didn't, he lost the, yeah, he just stopped doing it. And this is somebody who many times went to rehab and come out and constantly,
Yeah.
fall back. And that was a matter of, again, like with the robot guy, I didn't pay attention to that overtly. I didn't get pulled into that trauma. I said, I'm just going to treat you while I see what's going on here. So that was enormously important to me to know that.
Yeah, addictions are so maddening, really, because you have a person who seems normal generally, and then they keep creating a behavior, they keep doing something that is
Yeah,
so self-destructive. And people in their lives want to shake them and say, just stop, just don't do that thing again.
doesn't
But
work.
there's an internal driver, there's something that drives them. And it sounds like you got to the thing that drove him
Yeah,
and
you
it
have to do
ended.
that. You have to, the Nancy Reagan idea, just say no, is inadequate.
Yeah.
For someone else, for someone else, it's adequate, but not for somebody who's gone down that deep road. They do not know why it's happening. And I have encountered just unbelievably tragic stories of people destroying their families
Yeah.
by their addictions. And there can be really nice people. The shame there and the guilt is something they seem to have to reenact over and over again. And you have to find some way to interfere with that at a deep level. And
Yeah.
I have to say, homeopathy is one of the ways, probably the deepest way in which you can interact with that. It's a bomb placed in the deep in the subconscious, and when it goes off, the architecture of the psyche changes. The dust settles, the smoke clears, and everything looks a little bit different.
Well, it's so frustrating. You know what there is for addiction. There are some drugs, but mostly there's programs where you go and admit to the addiction again and again and deepen the groove and deepen the groove and hang out with people who have the same problems. So we just in this our society, we don't have a lot of solutions for it. But I'm going to know homeopathy is one that's highly, highly successful in that area if you know what to do with it. So I'll tell you a fun story and you can tell me what you think of it. So we talked about Bach flowers. And there used to be a company that was just a dad and his son, and they would make blends for things that had emotional names. So there would be rejection and abandonment. It was one of them. You know, depression and gloom was another. Anxiety was another. But he had a whole list. And I don't remember how many there were. Maybe let's say there were 20, 25, 30 at the most. And when I was a kid, we used these quite often. Well, we had someone that was staying with my mom, and that person had children, and the person was very volatile. You know, they would get up in the morning and they would just be screaming and yelling while the kids were trying to get ready for school, and it was terrible. It really disrupted the household. So my mom, she called it spiking. She put this Bach flower remedy or the combination in every liquid in the house, in the milk, in the juice, in the water, everything. And she said the next day, everybody was nice and calm, talking sweetly to one another. So this happened other times too. There was a friend of mine who her family was just, I mean, they were nuts. Like this family was crazy. And when they got together, they fought like hell. And so my friend, she lived just a few blocks away. And my mom, you know, had all the homeopathy, everything, you know, in the house. So she came over and she's like, there's a wedding, all the families in town, and they're all fighting like crazy, and I can't stand it. What should I do? So she sends her home with Bach rescue remedy. And she says, just spike the iced tea. Probably unethical. They spiked the iced tea, and in 20 minutes, everybody was getting along nicely. And this whole event went off without a hitch. No fighting, no screaming. I mean, nuclear, you know, apocalypse would go off when this family got together. And it was just nice and calm. So what do you think about groups using a homeopathic? What do you think about this? Crazy stories.
Um, yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I mean, homeopathy is used at the public health level. It cured the epidemic leptospirosis in Cuba.
Really?
That's documented by the World Health Organization. So yeah, and it's always been fantastic if you think about people in epidemics as being a group. It's, you know, many examples of that, cholera, fabulous results,
Really?
which has been suppressed again. And then right now there's an epidemic in Malawi, which I've written about, could be addressed with homeopathy. Yeah, no, it's spectacular results have been documented by anti-homeopaths, even like in London in the 1700s, in groups. When people do provings, homeopathic provings, the individuals in the proving find that the members of their family are influenced by it as well. So absolutely. And I one reason, I think homeopaths like to work with families because there's such overflow effect.
Yeah.
You really do well to treat everybody as opposed to just one member. And then if you treat just one member of the family, that person may outgrow the family and wind up, discombobulating the family history that way. I have an idea that I have never put into action. Actually, I'll just share it with you since we're just
Okay.
having fun. What I like to do sometimes, because I'm very interested in couples and relationships, and I've got people who would volunteer for this. I just don't have time to do it. Let's say I get a married couple, and I take their case, and I have a pretty good idea of what family remedies they're in, and I treat them. The idea would be to have each of them prove the other's remedy, so as to enter into their consciousness of the other person as a way of developing the marital relationship. I think that's completely valid. The inverse of the law of similars, I call it the law of inculcation, which happens when you do a proving. People temporarily inhabit this particular remedy state under the influence of a gross amount of substance. So when people, marital couples have a hard time seeing each other's point of view,
Yeah.
if they could temporarily inhabit it, that could be an opportunity for enormous growth. So sometime, if I ever have an opportunity to establish something like that, I would like to do that. I would also like to look at remedies made from predatory relationships. There are wasps which predate on particular kinds of insects, a spider or a bee. What would happen if people proved together the remedies of those predatory relationships? That would be something I would love to
That would be
investigate. There's all kinds of
fascinating
interesting things
too.
that could be done.
I like the way you think. That's my mind. It's always trying to think, well, what if I did? And what if we did? In our work, it's very interesting. There are some similars to homeopathy similarities, and there's some that, that are absolutely not. But what we often see again and again, when we first experienced it, we thought, holy crap. I mean, this is Einstein's spooky action at a distance. We would treat one person, and a lot of times it would be about the relationship. So we work at the neurological level and the sensation caused by the discomfort in the relationship. So physical sensation. So let's say, it's in their gut. They just really feel it, and the tension in the head, and we work on the neurological level. So the person would completely collapse the pattern. They get to full neutral on it. So they're in a state of, all right, whatever, I guess. Okay, it's fine. They go home, and miraculously, the other person seems changed too. The relationship is completely changed. But where it got really weird is when it started happening thousands of miles away. So I had a woman come in, she's a doctor of physical therapy, and she was there for her husband, but we touched on, everything's related. So we touched on her mom as well. When she got home, it was a 20-minute drive home. When she got home, the phone rang. It was still a landline. And it was her mother from 3,000 miles away that said, hey, I just realized that maybe over your whole lifetime, my actions probably had a bad effect on you. So I just want to say I'm sorry. And the person stood there with their mouth open because she never in her whole lifetime ever would have expected this phone call. She didn't even know what to do with it. But now we see it happening again and again and again. So it's part of that interaction of energy between people, even at a crazy, crazy distance. So it would be fascinating to know if a similar thing happens with homeopathy. One of the ways I look at it, the way I describe it is that, one drop of vinegar in milk sours the milk. You have a culture, right? In your family. We have a soup, an energetic soup. We're all in it, and it has a taste and a smell and a flavor and all of that. When one of us changes, the culture starts to change as well. And when they're changed profoundly, the culture can be changed profoundly. So be interesting to try that on with homeopathy as well.
Oh, it happens only all the time.
Only all the time. Only all
I'll
the
give you an
time.
example. So, I mean, and once again, when you understand that, you sort of see, you know, how we are has a tremendous impact on others. The remedy Ignatia, are you familiar with that one?
Oh, absolutely. We use
Okay,
it,
so
use it
that's
for grief
a
many
grief
times.
remedy.
Yeah.
Let me explain it to you. Maybe you already know this part about Ignatia. People who need that remedy are invested in principle, the idea that principle rules the world. So if that kind of person, who's a little bit idealistic, suffers a really shocking loss. It's not just a loss, but
Yeah.
a shocking one that undermines, really turns things topsy-turvy. She will not simply shed the idea of principle, but it will become inverted. So if she thinks that everything works out for the best, the inversion would be, well, there's a principle there, but now it's the opposite. Everything will work out for the worst.
Oh,
So
interesting.
she manufactures unwittingly victimization scenarios left and right. You'll have a conversation with her and you'll say something perfectly normal. She'll take it slightly wrong and she'll ask you more about it. And you say, well, I explained that to you. Well, what are you getting mad at me for? Well, I'm not mad at you. Well, now you're yelling at me.
Oh, yeah.
So suddenly, you know, you will see that this is happening. She's reenacting. The psyche wants to reenact its trauma. So if she's had this very traumatic loss or upheaval, the psyche was now committed to reenacting it as a way of understanding it. So when you give Ignatia the tiny version of that, that stops happening. So the person will come back and say, Jerry, you know, your remedy did nothing, but people are being nice to me now. Oh yeah, and by the way, somehow that whatever happened is not bothering me so much.
Right.
So there's lots of things like that. I'll tell you another story, which is just fun.
Okay, go for it.
I've told it many times, but just a lot of fun about, unless you want to ask me something.
No, tell me your story and I'll ask you something next.
Again, way back early in my career, I just get such a kick out of this. Client came to me and said, well, can you do anything for me? This is really terrible. I said, what's the matter? All I do is work. I work 50 hours a week. I don't want to do anything but work. It's just horrible. I'm irritable. I'm snappy. I don't want to do anything. I said, well, what's going on in your family? I don't care about them at all. I've got a sister who lives in Israel. I don't even want to see her. I just want to work all the time. Really? Yeah. So anyway, and I'm impatient. I gave her a very easy remedy. I gave Nux vomica. So 2 weeks go by, and then there's a message on my answering machine. She's canceled. She's not coming in. I called her back. Hi, I'm so and so. What's going on? If I give you the wrong remedy, I'll make a change. What's going on with you? She says, oh, your remedy did nothing. I said, well, what's going on with you? Anything different? Then there's a big sigh on the end of the phone. She said, well, I mean, I'm going up. If you want to know what's happening, yeah, I'm taking a vacation with my husband. We're going to go to Israel, see my sister.
Oh,
It's 3
nothing
months.
changed.
It's 3 months. 3 months. Yeah, I mean, I had the time. I figured I would take it. So we're going to go see her. But but that's not the end of the story. I would go to work, and my office was in this building, which I was in the second floor, and downstairs was a large room where they were teaching yoga. And I went to work, and I peek in the yoga room. There she is doing yoga. I never got credit for the remedy. It's one of these situations where it's just person is completely oblivious. Every single thing I prescribed for completely changed, and she didn't even recognize it.
Yeah.
But that's just fantastic. That's how we should get better. We should own the improvement. We should own the change. I just found that absolutely hysterical.
Weirdly, that was exactly the question I was going to ask you. So we see it all the time. People get amnesia that they ever had the problem in the first place. I was working with a client at a big event, a seminar, and the person needed a little bit of help. So I got in and helped her, and she kept saying, my mother hates me. She's the devil. She wants to kill me. She's the worst person ever. And I don't know this person. So I'm thinking this must be a terrible human. After about 3 minutes, 5 minutes, she says, oh, actually, you know what? My mom really, really loves me. And you know what? I'm her favorite. Really? Yeah. She's a person who's really fabulous. Like she has a big, big personality. And yeah, she has her issues, but you know what? She actually really loves me. That's great. I said, when we started, you told me your mom was the devil. She wanted to kill you. She looked at me like I was insane. After 5 minutes, I kind of smiled. I waited for it, raised my eyebrows, and then she said, I did say that, didn't I? I mean,
Wow.
So
Wow.
what we found is that when it's completely gone, and we use the term the nervous system, and by the way, we switch it out with the subconscious and even the ego. When it's completely gone, there's no driver. The brain is not interested in it even at all, immediately a lot of times. So it's terrible for business. We've had people that have forgotten that they came to see us. Like, oh, wow, that was really complete. But it's true. Once there's no driver, there's just the brain has no interest. It just doesn't think about it again.
But isn't this why women can have more than one child?
Yeah, right?
You forget the
Exactly.
pain of the first one, and yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Do you do homeopathy for childbirth?
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't personally. I just do like a lot of acupuncture during
Oh, yeah.
for childbirth. But yeah, there are kits for doulas. That's maybe 6 remedies that a doula would carry. Um, that make childbirth vastly improve the circumstance of that.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely.
I have one last final question because we've run out of time again. It's so much fun talking to you. In the past, I saw in your book a lawsuit against Highlands Remedies. There's the two major ones were Highlands and Boiron here in the States. Those are the ones we can use for the most part. And I noticed that there was a time in which we used to have children's remedies, teething tabs. And I used them for my kids and they were amazing. And then all of a sudden that was gone. That you could no longer find homeopathy for children, put together for the kind of the common things that kids would get. What do you know about that?
Yeah, it was a vague memory of that. It was one aspect of the anti-homeopathy campaign, because there was belladonna in one remedy used
Yeah,
in that. Yeah, they demonized the remedy. It's made absolutely no sense at all, except it's the capitalist agenda of the pharmaceutical companies. They want to create an association. They don't even have to wipe homeopathy out. They just want to create a negative
right.
the confusion around it, or a negative association for it. Back to the homeopathic hospitals. The one place you'll still see the word homeopathy will be on the gates of these decrepit, terrifying looking old broken down asylums. That's
Oh,
where they're still happy to have it, and create an assumption, association between homeopathy with the old terrors of the latter part of the century. It's just so cynical, so disgraceful. Yeah, no, it works. It works. People think homeopathy is dangerous. Oh, you give me arsenic? You're going to give me arsenic?
yeah,
Oh, belladonna? Oh my!
yeah.
The foolishness is encouraged, and they put the same remedies on the same shelves with non-homeopathic just to create confusion. It's very effective. It's terrible. People just do not have any awareness of this, and as I say, it's too bad because it isn't complicated, but it is exactly opposite everything we're being fed. Uh,
Exactly.
so that's a problem, real problem.
Yeah, exactly opposite. Well, the truth is that it's one of those things that has been hidden and it's been deeply hidden. And I would recommend, if you're not like me and been raised with it, dig in, start to look into it, find out what homeopathy is. See, a homeopath. It's a rabbit hole you could go down if you're a conspiracy theorist that you would absolutely dig what the history of this thing is. And I think this book actually is one of those places to start about the conspiracy of how it was pushed underground and why. And also, if you're a person that we service UK Health Radio and people who are interested in health and healing themselves, it's one of those things that you can learn to do a little bit for yourself as well. There's things that can save a life if you know how to do it. It's really, really worth learning about, in my opinion.
Very well put.
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, I hope that you'll consider coming back and chatting with us again.
I would love that. Yeah, maybe at the end of the year when my book on existential homeopathy comes out.
Ah, that would be right up our alley. I'd love to chat about that. Well, thank you so much, Jerry. I really have appreciated this conversation. So for now, we'll say goodbye. Goodbye to everybody around the world. If you're here from UK Health Radio Land, we'll see you again next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.